to Jonathan Taylor. Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor made a man miss the line of scrimmage and then runs it into Pater in a one-handed INT. Are you kidding me? Kenny Moore.
What a play by Nyheim Hines.
Horseshoe is back, baby. The horseshoe is back.
What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Bring the Juice Colts podcast. Indianapolis Colts GM Chris Ballard just had a pre-training camp press conference. I did a live stream on it, guys. Did not turn out super well. So I thought I would just do another video kind of recapping, gathering my thoughts a little bit on the things that Chris Ballard touched on. Now, there are some topics that I'm not going to give my personal opinion on. I'm just going to focus on injury updates and then obviously the big news with Frank Reich. So let's get into it, guys. So first off, Chris Ballard started off his press conference and talked about how he's excited to get back to camp, how he even was quoted and said, I think it's important to connect with the fans. That's why we come to training camp. So obviously you love to hear that. Chris Ballard is all on board for training camp the way the Colts have done it. They're one of only a few teams that still open it up to the fans, which I think is really cool. And that's a really unique thing that the Colts do for the fans. So great to see that he's on board with that. Hopefully that continues for years and years to come. Obviously talked about Frank Reich. That's the big news that came out of this press conference. Indianapolis Colts head coach Frank Reich, fully vaccinated and all that, he tested positive for COVID. So he's out right now, will not be there for this week for training camp. The Colts are hopeful that he will be back next week. I think Chris Ballard said Monday is what they're shooting for. But it seems like Frank Reich is in good spirits. He's obviously going to stay connected via Zoom. He's going to be connected. And it looks like the Colts are kind of divvy it up amongst the coaching staff. He's acted like Bubba Ventrone might have a big role because he said he doesn't have as much of a role as, say, Matt Eberflus or one Marcus Brady or one of those guys. So that was something of note. He also talked about some injury updates. He talked about three guys that we were really watching in training camp, that being Kemoko Turay, Marlon Mack, and Paris Campbell, all guys who suffered a major injury in the last couple years. And he said they're all 100% good to go for training camp. And that is big news because all three of these guys have a lot of X factor potential, right? If these guys are fully healthy, they help your team tremendously. That's just been the issue, right? For different reasons, right? Kemoko Turay is the one that was injured the longest, right? He got injured in 2019. He came back and played a little bit last year, but it was clear he wasn't 100%, and he's said as much since then. So this, I think, is the first time he's been 100% pre-injury. So that's great news. And obviously Marlon Mack last year tearing his Achilles. Good to see that he's 100%. The same with Paris Campbell, who got obviously injured in that Vikings game in week 2. Good to see him fully healthy. On the injury front, another guy who had a minor procedure in June, Darius Leonard, won't be out there early in training camp. The Colts acted like they would monitor him and hopefully see that, he's going to come back soon. But they acted like it was a minor thing for Darius Leonard. So obviously that's worth monitoring, but doesn't feel like that's going to be something that's going to really linger that far. Speaking of that, he talked about Fisher and Dayo Adengbo. He talked about Fisher. He said he's right on schedule with his rehab. He's excited for where he's at. And hopefully that means Fisher can come back sooner rather than later. We'll see. Obviously, the Colts didn't put a timetable on when Fisher is going to come back, but the Colts are pleased with his progress and where he's currently at in his rehab. So that's good. Speaking of that, he also touched on the contract extensions that are coming up for Darius Leonard and Braden Smith. And, he was pretty much said you're never going to regret paying a player or players like that. So you would assume that he's right on the cusp of paying both these guys what they deserve in the contracts. So that's obviously good news. Back to the vaccination real fast. Chris Ballard talked about how the Colts are over 60% now, so it would appear that they're getting closer to that 100% that the Colts want and the NFL want. So we'll see on that. Obviously, I'm not going to comment, obviously, on my thoughts on that because I try to stay out of it for reasons. Go look at Twitter. You'll understand why, essentially. So, but that's something that of note that Chris Ballard talked on. He touched on a little bit, talked a little bit more in depth, obviously, about, getting the COVID shot and all that kind of stuff, getting the vaccination. So obviously, if you want to hear his thoughts on that, go and tune in there. The last thing that I'll talk about is obviously the news that came out yesterday. Robert Windsor was placed on IR, and we were like, what in the world happened to Windsor? And Ballard specified that it was a hip injury. He says it's going to cost him the year, which we didn't know. We kind of speculated it might cost him the year, but we weren't 100% what that meant, right? Was he going to come back maybe later in the year? But Ballard acts like he's out for the year. So that obviously stinks for the second-year pro there in Windsor. But those were a couple recaps, guys, on training camp. I just wanted to get more of clear thoughts down for you guys, so you guys kind of understood a little bit about training camp and about where Chris Ballard's mindset is ahead of camp. Obviously, camp starts in a couple days, which is super exciting. I'm hoping to get down there pretty soon. My friend Sam is going to be down there, so I'm hoping to connect with him. Obviously, Lawrence Owen is going to go down, so I'd love to connect with him. And also parts of the local media who I've built friendships with. It's been kind of a cool thing that I've been able to do that. Hoping to get down there a lot, guys, because I love it. It's like Christmas, honestly, for a month. And I personally, if you're an Indianapolis Colts diehard, I would encourage you to go down. Even if you're not, it's a cool experience to watch players practice live. So would love for you guys to go down there. Would love to meet some of you guys if you go down there. I'm actually going down this Saturday. So if any of you are going down, I'd love to say hello to you. Yeah, guys, it's exciting. I cannot believe that training camp is finally here. It has been such a long off season. I don't know if you guys have felt it. I feel like these last two off seasons, now it's always a long off season. We always say that, but it feels like they've been especially long the last 2 years. So football cannot come soon enough, guys. Finally, that lull in the offseason is done. Thank goodness, because I have missed football, guys. I have missed talking about the Colts in more depth and actually having some news to talk about. So it's finally here, guys. One thing to let you guys know of, Derek and I will be recording a video later tonight, and we'll probably post it tomorrow, kind of talking about our thoughts and kind of our opinion on who we think probably will win the starting jobs on some of these position battles of interest. Ballard talked about it a little bit today in his press conference, mentioned the defensive end room, mentioned the wide receivers. There's obviously some other positions like cornerback number 2/3, depending how you look at it. So it's going to be a lot of fun battles in training camp, guys. We want to give you guys our educated opinion, our educated thoughts on that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. And man, if you're just finding us here right before training camp, we would love for you guys to follow along as we cover the Indianapolis Colts in the 2021 season. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much. And as always, go Colts.